This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
Leaders from China, Japan, and South Korea meet in Chengdu to discuss future partnerships and expanding common interests. Several armed groups in the DRC reportedly agreed to a ceasefire amid government forces offensive. And a Turkish delegation in Russia for talks over the conflicts in Libya and Syria. This is CGTN. Welcome to Africa Live with me, Beatrice Marshall, in Nairobi. Also coming up this hour, we bring you a special feature on Liberia's struggle to keep its economy afloat. And Orlando Pirates celebrate a global five-a-side football title. We begin in southwest China's city of Chengdu, where leaders from China, Japan, and South Korea have met to discuss future partnerships and expanding common interests. Chinese Premier Li Keqiang, Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe, and South Korean President Moon Jae-in spoke on the outcome of the meeting. CGTN's reporter Yang Qinghao has the details.
The three leaders just gave a joint presser. Economic and trade cooperation was an important agenda for this year's trilateral meeting, and the leaders all agreed to uphold multilateralism and defend free trade against the background of downward pressure of the world economy and rising trade protectionism. The agreement of the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership, which is known as RCEP, a mega trade pact involving the three countries, will be signed next year. And China, Japan, and South Korea are now working towards the signing of a free trade agreement. So the leaders have reached the consensus to speed up the process with joint efforts. Let's take a listen.
Regarding the ASEAN Plus 3 summit, we've all made our promises to accelerate the establishment of the free trade zone. This action is not only meaningful for the integration and collaboration of our economies, but it also contributes to world peace.
Premier Li pledged that China will further open to the outside world, especially in the areas of finance, service, industry, and elderly care, among other areas. We know that China will adjust import tariffs for a range of products starting January 1st. These are all positive signs for a deeper cooperation with the two neighbors.
We have reaffirmed the importance of this trilateral meeting, and we have decided to further promote our collaboration. We have concluded the agreement so as to promote future collaboration, and for those areas closely connected to people's daily lives, we will work together in a closer partnership.
I want to build a new era of the three kingdoms in which we can cooperate and develop together with the international community.
And next, the three parties will further expand cooperation on such areas as science and technology, fight against climate change, aging, and people-to-people exchanges. And they would also jointly explore the China-Japan ROK plus X model, which means that they will strengthen cooperation in the fourth and fifth market. And the three leaders also exchanged their views on international and regional issues, especially the Korean Peninsula issue. They agree that they will work together to ensure the lasting stability in the Korean Peninsula.
Let's now go to Africa's Great Lakes region. There are reports indicating that dozens of armed groups in the Democratic Republic of Congo have agreed to a ceasefire in the wake of an army operation intended to disband them. The army launched what it calls a large-scale operation against armed militias in the country's troubled east at the end of October. So far, the military says dozens of militants, including some of their perceived leaders, have been killed, while 200 civilians have also been killed in revenge attacks by the militants. Well, let's now get more details on this, and CGTN's Chris Ochamringa is joining us live from Kinshasa. Chris, what is the word from Kinshasa, though, on this reported ceasefire deal with the armed groups, and what do we know about the groups involved?
Well, the Minister of Internal Affairs here in Kinshasa has said that they've just received a statement, calling for the ceasefire from 32 armed groups that were based in South Kivu province, and that they're internalizing that document and they will issue a statement later. So no word yet from the government, but the local authorities in South Kivu, where this group was operating, are very excited about this news. This is what they've always been asking them to do. And, President Tshisekedi had asked his army commanders, to launch this military offensive and get rid of all the armed groups by December this year. And so this is very good news for very many people, not just in South Kivu province, but the entire DRC. We haven't been able to establish the particular, groups that have been have asked for this ceasefire, because the statement hasn't specified which particular groups were involved. But the Eastern DRC as a whole has more than 100 rebel groups operating there. So we will get to know about this later on.
Well, Chris, are there any reports from the government forces about the progress of the military offensive against the militias?
Yes, the army spokesperson says that they have stepped up the military offensive against the Allied Democratic Forces. This is an Islamist rebel group that's originally from Uganda, and other rebel groups operating in North Kivu province. And so yesterday they captured some soldiers who they said belonged to the Allied Democratic Forces, paraded them before journalists in Eastern DRC. We have got information that there were 37 rebels who were captured. The army has also said that they have also taken over some territory that was being controlled by these rebels to launch attacks on civilians in Eastern DRC. It's been a very sad moment for people in Beni territory especially. This is an area that is the epicenter of an Ebola outbreak, and these attacks have really hampered the response by healthcare workers to contain this outbreak. So the army is now working with UN peacekeepers, closing in on these rebels, and they are very optimistic that they are going to get them out of Beni territory.
And a final comment, Chris, because Beni and Goma residents have been up in arms about insecurity and militia attacks. What is the situation in these areas now?
The situation is now calm because people seem to have a sense, especially in Beni, that the army is now taking full control of this situation, trying to protect civilians. President Tshisekedi ordered more troops to be deployed there, so there are people patrolling the streets, and so there's no more protests in Beni territory. And Goma as well has been a peaceful area for a very long time. Goma has very many bases of MONUSCO, the UN peacekeeping mission, and very many other aid agencies there. There's also, it's a very busy commercial trading hub. So the protests there have really been about the attacks on civilians in areas like Beni. There's a pressure group of young men called Lucha that has been the one, holding protests in Goma. But by and large, the area has been peaceful, and people are just waiting to see how this offensive by the army and UN peacekeepers plays out so that peace can be restored in their area.
And Chris, just a quick clarification from you on the groups involved, though. What do we know, again, just for the benefit of our audience, what do we know about the groups involved in that ceasefire?
Please, could you repeat that, please? I didn't hear you clearly.
Yes, I just want to get a clearer understanding from you, Chris, about the reported ceasefire deal with the armed groups. What do we know about the groups involved?
Okay, so what happened was there was a retreat by these armed groups. There are 32 in number. They had a meeting in South Kivu province, and they decided that, they have been fighting for a very long time. Civilians have been killed, and it's time to lay down their arms. And so they came up with a communique, which they handed over to the authorities in South Kivu province, saying that they will no longer be blocking roads to extort money from people and killing civilians. And they also asked that the government releases all the members of their groups who have been detained in various prisons around the country. And so that's the deal that they want between them and the government. The government is still internalizing the document, and they say they will issue a statement later on. So this is the information we have so far about this deal.
All right, Chris Ochemringa joining us there from Kinshasa. And we are staying in the DRC. Insecurity in North Kivu and Ituri provinces continues to hamper relief efforts. The Ebola virus continues to spread in both provinces. CGTN's Ashtatal has more on how the Congolese army is helping aid workers reach vulnerable communities.
Treatment centers will have a new addition: military personnel. Militant attacks in the DRC have cut off healthcare workers from Ebola hotspots.
The government has increased the number of military and security personnel. Before, there were only a few soldiers that we could see passing by, but they were not enough to ensure that all the bases and the whole center was secure. But today, after the recent attacks, security has been tightened. We now see soldiers and they have settled here in Biakato.
The Ebola outbreak in the DRC continues in the North Kivu and Ituri provinces. The World Health Organization attributed the rise in cases in the provinces due to a security threat posed to health workers. There is hope on the ground for a more sustainable solution to the crisis.
Now that there's been an increase in staff, our offices do not have such a sufficient number of soldiers. But still, it's better now. We hope that the security will be improved.
For now, healthcare workers continue to do their best to stop the virus's spread. Astatal, CGTN.
A Turkish delegation is in Moscow to discuss Libya and Syria and areas where the two nations have some opposing views. The delegation will discuss Turkey's potential troop deployment and military support to Libya after Ankara and Tripoli signed a military cooperation accord last month. Russia has raised its concerns over the potential deployment. On Sunday, Turkish President Tayyip Erdogan said Turkey may increase military support to Fayyaz al-Sarraj's government of national accord, which has been fighting off a month-long offensive by the forces of Khalifa Haftar. The visit by the Turkish delegation, which is led by Deputy Foreign Minister Sedat Onal, comes weeks before the Russian President Vladimir Putin's planned visit to Turkey. Well, let's get deeper into this with our correspondent Dan Ashby. He's joining us live from Moscow. Dan, so what do we expect from this Turkish-Russian delegation meeting?
Well, you would expect them to come to some sort of agreement, because the wider context to this is Russia and Turkey coming slightly closer together on the world stage. Russia is very much trying to court Turkey, to bring Turkey into its orbit, because of course Turkey is a NATO member, and it would be fantastic for Russia's influence to be synchronizing much better with a NATO country, a bit of a blow to the West in some quarters. Plus also Russia is supplying Turkey with S-400 anti-missile systems. They are trying to work together in Syria. So it would be very strange indeed if they were to fall out over Libya, and that would affect all these other geopolitical issues. And the basis of this is because Russia explicitly has said that it's trying to remain equidistant between the two sides in Libya. It wants to bring them together to talk. It does not want the conflict to continue. So although there are these reports of Russian mercenaries acting in Libya, Russia is still trying to play it carefully. It hasn't come out explicitly for one side like Turkey has. And so the theory is that somehow Turkey and Russia will find a way to work through this.
Well, Dan, Russia and Turkey are on opposing ends when it comes to the conflict in Syria. They're also on opposing sides on the Libyan conflict. But what exactly are the differences on Libya specifically?
Well, I think it just appears as if they are slightly choosing different sides, backing who they think might be the winner. I mean, as I've said before, though, Russia isn't explicitly doing this, hasn't said it has picked a side in Libya. It's saying actually that it wants to get both sides talking, is trying to maintain a relationship with both sides. And to a certain extent, that's true. But I think both Turkey and Russia are eyeing the same objective. They want to back the winning side. They want to try maintain a relationship with a future Libyan government to give them access to lucrative energy deals. And they're a bit unclear about which side to choose. Now, Russia has obviously come out, it appears, and given mercenaries to the one side. Now we have Turkey going to the GNA and offering more military support. And I think that will give Turkey and Russia a bit of an awkward situation here to negotiate. But as I say, not one that they can't overcome. I think they will come together because both of them have the same end objective. There's just a slight disagreement, it seems, on the means to get there.
Well, the Libyan crisis is coming to close to a decade now. So if they reach a compromise on Libya, how would it change the situation in Tripoli?
Well, from the reports we've got, it could be very significant indeed. The reports on the ground about these Russian mercenaries seem to appear that they have made quite a big difference. They're able to train Libyan fighters in the use of attack drones, upskill them, and it seemed to be that the arrival of those Russian mercenaries led to big advances at first. Now, some of those reports have been questioned, and there is a theory that they're overstated, that this is all part of the sort of propaganda around Russia's strength. But that being said, Turkey's intervention with firepower, possibly even with soldiers, we're now hearing as well, that would make a huge difference. So any deal between Russia and Turkey would definitely affect the future of Libya and the future of this conflict. And I think everyone will be watching very closely to see what they come up with. At the moment, there's absolutely no sense at all of what they're going to agree. They haven't leaked anything to the press. They haven't put out any theories. All they've simply said is that they want to talk to each other. We just know there's a meeting. We're waiting to see what comes out of it.
Danashbi joining us there from Moscow. Thank you. Now, Egypt's parliament has approved a recent government reshuffle by President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi. The president has kept Prime Minister Mustafa Madbuti in office, but there were new faces in several portfolios. Here's Yasser Hakim with the latest changes.
Quite a number of changes in the cabinet, including a new Minister of Agriculture, a new Minister of Social Solidarity, and merging tourism with antiquities under the Antiquities Minister Khaled Anani. However, a couple of changes caught more attention. First is reinstating a Minister of State for Media and Communications. The Ministry of Communications had been cancelled after the 2013 uprising.
The communications and media file is very important this period to shed light on the mega national projects established in the last few years, as well as the economic growth. Media has not been able to reflect these accomplishments internally and to the international community. I believe Usama Hekal is the best choice with his vast experience in media and as a member of parliament.
Another move is to hand over the Ministry of Investment to the Prime Minister. He holds both portfolios now.
Egypt needs a new vision for investments, both local and foreign. There were problems facing investors recently, and having this file with the Prime Minister personally is a positive sign that any hurdles will be quickly lifted and all problems solved swiftly. It's good for the investment climate.
Naveen Gameh has also become the first woman to head the Ministry of Trade and Industry. She will be leading the new government's initiative to reopen thousands of closed factories.
With the change in ministers, I'm looking forward to see a change in policies. I hope they can concentrate on promoting businesses to create job opportunities. We need extra attention and improvement in the education and health sectors too.
11 deputy ministers were also appointed. The aim is to slowly merge the young generation into leadership roles. The government has been sworn in on Sunday, and the ministers are expected to outline their vision and policies at a parliament session in the next couple of weeks. Yes, Hakim for CGTN, Cairo.
You're watching Africa Live, still ahead on the program. We'll bring you the experiences of a refugee evacuated from Libya to Rwanda. And Egypt makes preparations to secure Cairo during Christmas.
Each day, there are millions of stories. Each one can open new perspectives, new possibilities. Wherever you look, we are there to see, discover, explore. We put the pieces together to find what really matters to you, all around the world, all around the clock. Our reporters are at home across the globe. From our headquarters in Beijing and production centers in Washington Nairobi, and London. China Global Television Network. Stories from across the globe, reaching people across the globe. CGTN. See the difference.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Somalia is battling a plague of locusts. Herdsmen and cultivators are calling on their government and the international community to help them. The locusts have left them struggling to feed their families. Here's more.
He has 9 children to feed and relies on his herd of 100 goats to do so. But a massive plague of locusts in Somalia, which has already destroyed tens of thousands of hectares of crops and pasture lands, has now spread to Dusa Mareb, where Hassan lives. It's the worst invasion in 25 years.
The locusts have destroyed all our pastures, and I'm very worried that my livestock will starve and die. Because these locusts are everywhere and are taking over the whole area.
The insects have destroyed 70,000 hectares of land in Somalia and neighboring Ethiopia, threatening food supplies in both countries and the livelihoods of farming communities. It's been made worse by unseasonably heavy rainfall and floods across East Africa in recent months. Experts say climate shocks are largely responsible for rapidly changing weather patterns in the region. Hassan and other farmers say they're doing what they can do to fight back against the locusts. But with such vast numbers, they say they also need the help of the government and the international community. Astatal, CGTN.
In Rwanda, over 2,000 refugees have been granted asylum after being rescued from Libyan detention centers. Many of them had attempted to cross the Mediterranean into Europe. One such is Mohammed Dawood from Sudan's Darfur region. Here's Daniel Arap Moy with Dawood's story.
He is now safe, but the memories of Libya are still fresh.
They beat and something like this, and the people say you are a slave and something. They beat the people, punish the people. You know, there's no food.
Mohammed Dawood is from Darfur, the troubled region in Sudan. As the conflict raged at home, his family raised funds for him to travel to Europe through Libya.
And I tried to collect the money to go to Libya, because the Libya in that time it was good. Every day I heard the people there crossing by that way.
But tragedy struck. He was one of the many migrants who were arrested in Tripoli as they headed to the coast to board dinghies and cross the Mediterranean. At the detention center, he was one of the many who were physically abused and humiliated by being referred to as slaves, and that hurt him deeply.
When you call me a slave, that it is hard more than punish. That, yeah, of course you have to know that. Yeah. When someone say to you, you are a slave, that try to kill me, but not call me a slave, because I know myself who am I.
Dawood is one of the hundreds of refugees who were recently evacuated to safety in Rwanda. This is in line with the Emergency Transit Mechanism Agreement involving Rwanda, European Union and UNHCR. Under this program, vulnerable migrants are being moved to Rwanda. Some are to be integrated into local communities or choose to return to their home countries. The European Union has offered Rwanda over $11 million to fund this scheme.
I feel like I go back home. Yes, this is my home, because I feel this is my home. Yeah, really. Because I see the eyes of Rwanda people, really they love the others. That's why I see the love in your eyes. That's why, I love this country and love these people. Hello. Hello, Mama.
He has not spoken to his mother for 2 years now. And her sweet voice on the phone enlightens his day. Back in Libya, over 2,500 migrants are still being held in detention centers. They wait for their turn to test freedom and acceptance. Daniel Arab Moy, CGTN.
The end of year is round the corner. It is a time when people celebrate all over the world. It is also a time when security agencies are on high alert. Yasser Hakim looks at how Egypt has been preparing for the new year.
The Christmas and New Year are an important period for Egypt, not just because of Egypt's celebrations, but also because it's a high season for tourism as well. Tourists come to visit the ancient monuments, but they also enjoy the beaches and sunny weather in Egypt rather than the cold winter elsewhere. That's why the government is adopting extra security measures around the country to ensure a safe holidays. Tourist sites will not be the only recipient of security deployment.
The government adopts a comprehensive security plan from before the festivities. More than 200,000 policemen and officers are involved. There is a security zone around churches and cathedrals. The last surveillance equipment are being installed. The strategy is to abort any operations before it happens.
Terrorism has been a concern after the 2013 uprising, targeting churches and worshippers. But the last 3 years saw a major improvement in the fight against militants.
It's excellent. The security situation now is much better than previous years. The ordinary Egyptian can feel the difference and how safe it's become. This safety has allowed tourism and the economy to flourish.
The work is currently underway to ensure an incident-free festive holidays. Yas Hakim for CGTN, Cairo.
And speaking of Christmas preparations, let's cross over to a place called Naburu in Uganda and see how they do it there. Our correspondent Leon Nta is at a very interesting place. Leon, what's going on there?
Well, it's like you say, a very interesting place. This is Naguru, one of the suburbs of the capital, Kampala, a place with all sorts of lifestyles, and if quite well, you could listen to some of the music that is coming through. It is Lingala music from the Congo. Just somewhere further up is music from traditional music from within Uganda. But yes, Naguru is a place that many people will know for having grown most of Uganda's sports personalities. But it also has a different crop of people, people that love their life and people that love the kind of things that they do. But mostly, of course, now that it is a festive season, it is holiday time, many have taken their time away from their work and from their jobs to come and spend time in most of their hangout places. I just want to walk you through one of the hangouts here. It is, well, with no particular name, but in this particular place, they brew a particular product called marwa. It is done out of fermented millet, I have been told, with hot water added to it. And, well, I hope they can show you through it. A very exciting drink taken from the bucket. Hot water is usually added into it. And the gentlemen here who have been able to speak to actually tell me that they'll spend most of their day here and probably even still get into the Christmas day tomorrow, well, enjoying themselves around here. So yes, Naguru is a very exciting place with the music coming through. The local bars here offer a very different experience, a very exciting moment for several of the people that come and well, partake of the alcohol here, and that makes them happy, that gets them into the mood. We just can't quite know how much longer this will last because the festive season goes on until, well, until the new year. Thankfully, the weather hasn't let down much today on Christmas Eve. Hopefully it will keep us cool as it is, and very much so keep some of the revelers here enjoying themselves into Christmas and well into the new year. And for many, like a common saying here is, it is party after party.
All right, Leon Nta on that party after party in Naburu in Uganda as East Africans usher in the Christmas season. Let's now take a short break. When we return, we'll bring you a special feature on Liberia's struggle to keep its economy afloat. And a satellite television project seeks to connect Malawi's rural masses to the world.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
We now turn to CGTN's Bruce Harrison, who is in Paris, where weeks of strikes have shut down much of France's public transportation during peak holiday season. In a rare bright spot amid the chaos, the National Railway Service will see to it that thousands of children still make it home for the holidays.
Trains and metro services across the country have come to a halt. Others are offering limited rides right now, and then there's stations just like this one that have closed entirely. It's all because union workers are striking against the government's proposed pension reforms. This year may also see something different. Parents have been concerned that their children, young children, wouldn't be able to come home for the holidays. That's because typically for kids age 4 to 14, you can ride on the state railway, the SNCF's trains, and be accompanied by a monitor. But the SNCF said because of the strikes and staffing concerns, they didn't have enough people to guarantee safety or proper supervision for these solo travelers. Well, there was massive public outcry, and enough railway workers got together and have formed more or less of a Christmas truce to see that enough trains will run to accompany these miners on their travels home. But there won't be a Christmas truce for everyone this holiday season. The country's two biggest rail unions have said they're not going to budge on their strike. And the SNCF says that at least, or roughly 200,000 of its passengers who were planning to travel are going to have to cancel their trips or find tickets elsewhere because there won't be seats for those state railways this Christmas. And it's unclear when these disruptions are going to end. There's vast public support for the strikes and the protests that are backing them. Just last week, more than 500,000 Parisians flooded the streets of the capital, demanding that French President Emmanuel Macron drop his proposed pension scheme. His biggest critics say that these plans will force people to work later into their lives, longer, or face reduced payouts once they retire. Despite this public support, more than 62% according to recent polls, there are critics. Restaurant owners, for one, say that their sales have plummeted. For Parisians now taking taxis over closed metro trains, they're having to choose between cab fare or a night out. And it's much harder for others to find time for a croissant or a cafe at your brasserie if you simply can't commute.
Aerospace giant Boeing has announced a change in leadership following a year marred by two fatal crashes. CGTN's correspondent Sarah Walton has more from New York.
Boeing's share price ended the day up nearly 3% following the news that the CEO of the company, Dennis Mulienburg, is to leave in the new year. We saw a statement released from Boeing which said the board determined that a change in leadership was necessary to restore confidence in the company moving forward, and it seems that confidence being shared by some investors, hoping that fresh leadership at the top of the company will lead to a fresh start for Boeing in the new year, because 2019 has been a year for the company to forget, really, since March, when the second fatal crash of a MAX 737 jet led to the grounding of that aircraft. Since then, really, it's been hit after hit for the company in PR terms. We saw revelations in the media that there were text chains and emails that revealed the company had known there were issues with the jets before the crash. Then we saw the really awkward spectacle of Mr. Mulienburg having to give evidence to Congress here in the United States, all that in front of the families of the victims. Boeing has said all along that it believed the jet would be recertified to fly before the end of the year, But we are almost at that point, and it still hasn't happened. And recently we had the news from Boeing that in January it is going to be suspending the production of the 737 MAX. Now, despite the rally today, the share price for Boeing is down on the year, and that's cost the company $8 billion. And it's not just Boeing being affected by this. Remember, all the companies that work with Boeing, those firms in its supply chain will be feeling the effects from this as well. So change at the top does not automatically fix the issues that Boeing has. It's going into the new year still needing to get that 737 MAX cleared to fly. And once that had happened, it also faces the challenge of restoring customer confidence. It's going to have to convince passengers, people like you and I, to fly in a 737 MAX once again. Sarah Walton, CGTN, New York.
To our first installation of our series on Liberia now. There is widespread discontent in the West African nation over a worsening economic crisis. Businesses are on the decline and inflation has soared. Consumer prices are up while employment prospects are diminishing. Earlier this year, the International Monetary Fund reviewed Liberia's economic growth forecast for 2019 to 0.4% from 4.7%. Susan Mwongeli reports.
Monrovia's sprawling seaside slum of West Point is a bustling place. With about 75,000 residents, it's a good choice for a food business. But Patience, a mother of 5, says business is not as it used to be.
The business is hard. We sell the business now. You mean? To get on the inside now? No way. Thing expensive, thing hard. I tell the business now moving there before.
Before, she would make about $5 a day. Now she says it takes a stroke of luck to make half of that. It's not just failing business that Liberians are complaining about these days. Rising food prices too, which have doubled in recent months.
If we are not in recession, then I may say that sooner or later we'll get into depression.
Authorities attribute the situation to the 2014 Ebola outbreak that killed almost 11,000 people in the region and scared off both investors and aid workers. Then there is the withdrawal of the United Nations peacekeeping mission, whose average annual budget was equal to almost a quarter of Liberia's GDP between 2007 and 2018.
Lower Virginia used to boast of a large expatriate community. But since the last troops of the UN mission in Liberia left in 2018, places like this remain deserted. And it's a similar story in other parts of Liberia.
Brutus Sobi is a former driver for the UN in Liberia. He lost his job last year when the mission wrapped up. He now runs a taxi service, but his car broke down a few days ago.
Yesterday, a friend sent me mobile money, just 1,000 Liberian dollars to get it out. This guy had to tell me, say, no money. He only sent me money, but I'm not receiving money. So I had to beg him just to get my 1,000 from him so I can provide food today. Because my vehicle now is down. As I'm speaking to you. So life is not easy.
We should have planned for sustainable growth after Omid Shahal left the country by investing into the real sector, whether agriculture, to stimulate some sort of a growth. But our government only focus on extracting industry sector, which is the iron ore, where we export the rubber. And the king of time, the resources price went down in the global community.
President George Weah has publicly acknowledged Liberia's economic woes and promised action.
When we had hard evidence of corruption, the president took action regardless of who was involved. And in this instance, that was the head of a public corporation. He immediately suspended him and put him at the disposal of our Liberia Anti-Corruption Commission, and he went to court. He was just recently vindicated. I need to mention that. So it shows that where the president needs to take the strong actions, and generate the necessary political will to act, he acted.
These steps are doing little to assuage Liberians with mass protests planned for later this month. Organizers of December 30th protests believe this is the only way to get the government to take concrete steps to fix the economy.
We have government owing civil servants months of salary payments. There have been entities and government ministries and agencies that have been protesting for salaries, for transportation arrears, owe them. All of these issues keep piling up. And then on top of it, we have a systematic breakdown in transparency institutions.
In October, government agreed to an economic and financial deal with the International Monetary Fund to implement reforms including wage harmonization, an affordable wage bill level, and prudence in overall public sector spending. Good news for now, but might take much longer to implement. Of concern for both patients and Brutus is immediate steps that will bring in more cash flow and lower food prices, so that, together with their families, they can have a good Christmas. Susan Mungeli, CGTN, in Monrovia, Liberia.
A satellite television project seeking to connect 500 rural communities in Malawi is opening rural masses to the world. The project, implemented with assistance from China, is helping Malawi's rural masses learn new farming techniques. CGTN's Daniel Arapmoy tells us more.
The living room is silent. Attention focused on a satellite TV program broadcast from China. This family is not watching a televised drama series. They are learning new techniques of rice farming from China in their living room. Sadrak Venard, a farmer from Piliranjuzi village in Malawi's traditional authority Masumbukunda, is one among thousands of low-income Malawians benefiting from China's satellite TV connectivity project.
I am happy because now I am able to watch and learn about different cultures across the world, something I never thought would come my way in this life.
This rural family now enjoys the full benefits of the digital world as China and Malawi enhance their shared pursuit of bilateral cooperation. The Malawi Satellite TV project is part of a forum on China-Africa Cooperation Initiative that aims to provide satellite TV reception to 10,000 African villages. Maxon Poko is another resident of Pirilanjuzi village enjoying the China Satellite TV project for the first time.
In the first time, when I wasn't got this one, my children were playing with something which is harmful to them. But upon using Star Times, my children do mostly enjoy very much.
In this village, one cannot fail to notice TV satellite dishes mounted on rooftops, signaling clear access to information for villagers. According to a 2014 survey by the National Statistical Office, only 11% of Malawi's households have working television sets. The Chinese government, through the project, has donated 500 solar-powered digital TV sets, fully integrated with decoders, 1,000 solar-powered projectors, and 10,000 digital decoder sets. China's support to Malawi's rural poor aims at bringing development to the country's rural masses through rural growth centers.
This has boosted the worldview of people in the villages, because you know that the people in the remote areas, in most cases, they are denied of access, to information. But with this, the project that government has rolled out through aid from China, we have been able to reach out to so many people.
The Malawi Satellite TV project is being implemented by China's Star Times Group, enabling locals to watch at least 21 TV channels at affordable cost. Daniel Arap Moy, CGTN, Pirilanjuzi Village, Malawi.
And we still have more news for you here on the program. Here's what's ahead. A photographer in Kenya's Kibra informal settlement is showing a different side of life in the slum.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
From Kenya's informal settlements of Kibra in Nairobi, we bring you the story of Brian Otieno, a photographer who is showing a different side to life in the slum by documenting human stories and the extraordinary in the ordinary.
My name is Brian Otieno, and I am from Kibera. I am a documentary photographer or a photojournalist. Today there's a fire. It was also in a place where it was very, very squeezed. The fire truck couldn't come, so it was left for the people to deal with it. And so I decided to go there and photograph because that's what I always do. I'm looking for those images that show a sense of community, that show togetherness. I know the people, and the people know me. I've experienced the life. There's a good side, and there's a bad side. So I want to show the reality of life. I didn't think of photography as a career. I was just passionate. I was looking and scrolling at the images of Kibera, which were on Google, and then I was seeing these images of poverty, tragedy, all these bad sides. Then it was then that I opened a Facebook account and called it Kibera Stories. I was taking photos of women by the roadside, selling vegetables, people fetching water, kids playing football. I never wanted to miss anything that was happening in Kibera. If there's an event, I wanted to be there. If there's a fire, I wanted to be there. People started noticing the images. People started looking at these images and there's a page called Kibera Stories, and we're showing a different side of the slum. What makes a good story is the people I photograph, the person in the photo. Because through the image you see their passion, you can see their emotion, you can even feel them. There's this image I took of the ballerina girl, Elsie. She's in the street and she's stretching her arms, and through that photograph you can see she's someone who is passionate and she's doing what she loves in the place where she was born. I look at that image, I see a girl who is also representing other kids in the community because I'm seeing a dreamer. It shows a different side of the community that people rarely see. And also through the photograph, I interact with so many people. I get to hear their stories and I share them to the world.
Now, the Ebola outbreak in the DRC has killed 2,200 people since August of last year. Efforts to contain the deadly disease have been hampered by insecurity in the east of the country. But health workers have managed to heal more than 1,000 people amidst all the difficulties. CGTN's Chris Ochamringa caught up with some of the survivors and now reports.
A day of jubilation for survivors of Ebola in the DRC's eastern village of Mangina. They are being discharged from this treatment center where other patients were not as lucky to come out alive. According to the DRC Health Ministry, 1,077 people have been cured of Ebola since August last year. Rebecca Katungu is one of them.
I got infected with Ebola from a person who came to visit me at home. I welcomed the visitor without knowing that she had the disease. I later noticed that she had symptoms, but it was too late.
She says the disease has really changed her life.
Life has become tough. I used to be a farmer, but I no longer go out to dig because my body has become weak.
Many patients who've recovered from the deadly disease are now helping to spread the word that Ebola can be cured if treated early. Health officials have recorded a decline in the number of Ebola cases over the past 3 months, but insecurity and violence in eastern DRC could reverse the gains. A recent attack on a treatment center in the east left 4 health workers dead. The WHO says it's heartbroken by the killings and fears it could lead to the spread of the outbreak. Ebola survivors like Rebecca have motivated health experts to scale up the vaccination campaign to prevent the outbreak from spreading. But the insecurity and the anti-UN protests in eastern DRC are now their main obstacles. They are appealing to the armed groups and residents of Beni to allow healthcare workers to end the outbreak. Chris Ochamringa, CGTN, Kinshasa, Democratic Republic of Congo.
Egyptians got to witness a special Chinese fashion show. Cairo's renowned opera house hosted a Chinese costume fashion show. Dozens of visitors gathered to see the beautiful designs. The costumes drew inspiration from China's 24 solar stems. The solar stems are based on the sun's position in the zodiac. Ancient Chinese farmers created the system to govern agricultural affairs and farming activities. And your sports news coming up next. Here's what's ahead. Orlando Pirates celebrate a global five-a-side football title.
How would you create your legend? On the fields, on the tracks, in the arenas of Africa. Were you born to be a player? Could this moment